Town Clerk Hurd is also in attendance, along with Building Official Desir. So could I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Sommerfeld, and a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Dalton. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved or adopted. Yeah. And then the next agenda item is the approval of minutes from the May 14th meeting, which I was unable to attend. And unfortunately, I don't know that there were any minutes taken. I did talk to Councilman Ellis, and he said he had jotted down some notes, but he did not record motions and things like that. And my understanding is there was quite a bit of discussion. So we do not have any minutes to approve yet. I'm gonna see if we can get Councilman Ellis's notes and, you know, put something together just to have a record. So we were going to move on from approval of the minutes. Okay, agenda items. 4A is a request for variance, and I asked Scott to be at the meeting to specifically help us with this one. I did pass out to everyone a copy of, yes, it should be 2 pages. Request for variance, shop space at 522 Walnut, along with, I didn't print out all of the pretty pictures. But this was a bit of an interesting one, and I just thought it would be a good thing for the Planning Commission to talk about, because we will end up talking about it in the at the Town Council as well. But this originally came in as a request for variance for a guest house, correct? Yes, and
his intent was to use it as an office or something like that, I'm not sure, but, yeah, so I think he should be coming here with his wife to give you a little more
oh, is he
explanation.
gonna come this evening?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. He did resubmit it with a request for variance for shop space. And so this document on the top here, he talks about how he wanted to, he wants to have a shop, and he designed it to also accommodate out-of-town guests because his family's in Georgia and he wanted extra storage. And I guess when it first came in as a guest house, you know, per ordinances, you can have one single family home on property. And so, it was just, you know, we were trying to figure out how we were gonna deal with it. And then he kind of reworded it a little bit. And he's still being very forthright and honest, saying it will also accommodate people sleeping there.
Well, yeah, it's got a kitchen,
Right,
it's got a bathroom.
yeah.
Looks to me more like a potential rental.
And there's that. So we wanted to just, I don't quite really know where to go with this one at the moment. In our ordinances, does it specify no, like in accessory buildings, that there should be no living space? I don't, I should have looked.
It does specify only one dwelling unit, yep.
Just one dwelling unit, yeah. And I'm pretty sure I recall that the association covenants specify only a single dwelling on a lot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, you know, we can, as a town, we could update our ordinance to narrowly define something like this if we so desire. But I just kind of wanted to bring up the topic to see what everyone's,
But we do
Thoughts
allow
were.
accessory buildings.
what's that? We do allow accessory buildings, exactly. So how do we, I mean, quite frankly, how do we know that someone doesn't have a bathroom and sleeping quarters and an accessory building now?
Well, there's a lot of detached accessory buildings that do have living quarters.
Yeah, so,
I'm totally unaware of that.
Mayor,
yes.
No,
if
no,
I may,
I want us to talk, Brady. Could you hold off for a while?
well, you seem to be missing something very important.
Well, come over here and say it over here where we can hear you.
So I guess nobody bothered to look up what the ordinance actually says.
Yes, we're about to quote it.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead then. It didn't seem like anybody looked.
Yep.
Because it clearly states what you would do in this situation.
So you're saying there's an exemption in the ordinances?
No, I'm saying it's not allowed.
Yeah, it's not allowed.
Right, but I'm saying it states specifically that it's not allowed, which nobody has been able to quote for me yet.
Right.
I asked that last time, and I'm asking that this meeting, and yet nobody on the commission knows what the ordinance actually is.
Well, we didn't talk about this at the last meeting, so this is
Well, we
only
did,
come up
you
this-
weren't here at the last
I wasn't
meeting.
here, well.
Right, this was the main topic of discussion at
Okay.
the last meeting. And so my point of contention was, Originally, my understanding years ago when I first came to this town is that this was not allowed. Okay, then we had multiple times over the last 4 years where plans exactly like this have come up for approval and they've been approved and they've been built. Okay, so, from what I remember, and I'm going off memory, from what I remember, our discussion as a planning and zoning board at the time, was that the accessory nature of it did allow for dwelling because it was still an accessory use to the main structure, which is how the code interprets it. When you look at the code IRC code book, the definition for accessory structure does not rule out dwelling structures as an accessory use, and so that's what I'm familiar with. But if you look up the definition of an accessory, and I forget the actual accessory structure or whatever it says for our town ordinances, it does specifically state that you cannot have any sleeping area, dwelling area, any of that kind of thing in an accessory structure.
That's correct.
And so that is what the commission should be following. Now, my point to that is, though, that does create issues for contractors, because in my own case, originally 4 or 5 years ago, I told somebody to ask me if it was allowed. This is when I first joined the P&Z board, so they knew I was familiar, or I was part of the board at that time. So they were asking me about it. It was one of my neighbors. They wanted to build a detached garage with a living space up above, just like this. And I told them I don't believe it's allowed, because at that time I'd been told the association doesn't allow it, and so we wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
Then we started approving. So, of course, you guys know Wayne Hall. He built his very soon after that, and of course my neighbor found out about it, so I got egg on my face because I told him it wasn't allowed, and yet the town went and permitted it. So then we permitted multiple others since that time. And so all I would ask, as somebody who does business in the town, it would be nice to have some consistency,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. I agree with
Because
that.
now, if we're gonna flip-flop again and go back to what the ordinance actually says, which is what the correct interpretation should have been all along, now, all of a sudden, if I've told people over the last year that, yes, the town has been approving permits for these kind of structures, and then they go and make plans to build one, and now all of a sudden it's not gonna be approved, even though nothing in the ordinance has been changed, right? It just creates some confusion for people. So it would be nice, to see that the commission actually looks up the stuff in the ordinance before they go and vote on it, because they did a vote on it last time without understanding what the ordinance actually said.
There's no minutes, so I can't.
Right, and so, so that's one thing, let's make sure that we're researching, and if any member of the commission hasn't had a chance to look at the plans, hasn't had a chance to look up the ordinances that apply to those plans, you are allowed to table it until the next meeting. You don't have to make a vote on it at this meeting if you are not familiar enough with the plans and the ordinances that pertain to those plans, right? So let's not make votes on things before we've done the research. And then also let's have some consistency, over the years, so that we're not changing things from one year to another, and people can actually keep up with what's allowed and what's not.
So-
Those are my only two things.
And I appreciate all that. I wish there had, quite frankly, all the discussion from last time had been recorded. Were you here at the meeting last time? Okay. Let me ask you as the billing official, sorry.
Part of the
Go ahead.
problem was,
Go ahead.
we never knew that this was gonna be on the
Agenda from last time, right.
It was thrown at us with
Kind of just-
nothing,
Yeah, you didn't have a chance to review it.
right, never had a chance to review it or anything.
So you should have voted on it if you haven't reviewed.
We didn't vote last week, last
Well,
time.
last week you denied it. That's a
No,
vote.
we didn't. There was no vote taken.
There was a vote.
There was a vote?
Yes, there was.
We
My
did deny
memory's
it.
failing.
Yes.
Well,
Deny it.
I don't see any reason, I don't see any reason to change.
No, I think it was the correct one, but my point is the commission should be doing the research before the vote, not backing it up after the fact, right? Because you
Well-
wanna make sure you're getting the right call originally, and doing that probably would have fixed this years ago, and when we've been approving this all along and shouldn't have been, is my point, right?
I wanna just go back on what's been approved in the past, right?
Yeah, there's been like half a dozen of them.
Well, they've been half a dozen of garages with something like a living,
Yeah,
yes.
bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom.
I don't know about kitchen and bathrooms, but I
I
do
could
know
name a few,
bedrooms
but
and
yeah,
stuff like that.
they've been
But-
approved
but
by
they've been inside a garage, and a garage and a house can go on a single-family dwelling. So that was what, and I agree with you,
Yeah,
those were being Don't
We just
put
weren't
the
looking at
impacts.
so we were looking at the ordinance and it says accessory structure, we just didn't go to look at the definition for accessory structure as defined by the town, not defined by IRC, because IRC would allow it under their definitions.
Yes.
But the town definition is different, that's what I guess nobody realized before, including myself. And so we had been allowing it, and I mean, I can think of 4 off the top of my head, and then there's probably 2 more that I'm pretty sure were approved within the last few years. But yeah, it's just, it slipped through essentially, and I'd like to make sure that the commission is researching these things beforehand so that more things don't slip through in the future,
I
essentially.
mean, if, just, I mean, again, I wasn't here, but if there was a vote taken last night, it sounds like it was probably a bit premature because there had not been appropriate time for a review. Plus, maybe I'm wrong about this, but if this is a request for a variance, I think there has to be a public hearing and there has to be, like, there's procedures in our ordinances that are supposed to be followed as well.
Basically, we denied the variance.
Mhm.
That was what we denied.
Okay,
Well, we discussed it, and I said,
For the
look, you know, I think we need to take another look at it, so, you know, because it got voted out just off the table immediately, and, he's got a point, you know, I submitted all the plans, everything, and no one really looked at it just
Yeah.
because they thought it was a dwelling, and I think, you know, the wording had maybe something to do with it, you know, because the town clearly states there's only one dwelling unit, but, yeah, there are several, you know, like he said, apartments above garages that are detached and even attached, you know, so, you know, and I guess it comes down to, you know, yes, it seems like in the past they've been built, people are renting them out, and it's being done here on the ranch, so going forward, are we gonna, you know, I guess we need to take a look at, that as a fact that it's already been, you know, passed in the past, how are we gonna deal with it going forward?
yeah.
How
So,
about just follow the current ordinances?
yep, that's what you guys gotta decide on. It's not a building code, you know, it's a town ordinance, so and some of these ordinances, you know, we're trying to update, and some, you guys have to decide which ones you wanna keep and which ones we're gonna change, so.
I didn't know they were up for change.
Well, there are some, you know, some things that, you know, like he said, I go off the building code, the IRC, which we're, you know, gonna start enforcing in 2021. That's building code, but we have town ordinances that, you know, say for instance, an example, you know, most people wanna build a garage on their property before they build the house. I don't see what the problem is by doing that, because you gotta have stories, so in the ordinance, you know, they want you to build the house and the garage. You know, so there's certain things, it's the same thing with the solar, they don't allow any pole mounted or any type of solar other than roof mount, so those are the ordinances I'm talking about. We got a whole list that me and Kristen started, just because some of these ordinances are outdated.
Yeah,
And I think we need to bring them, you know, to current.
So for part of the charge of the planning commission, and I know we're still, in a way, working through all the things that the planning commission does as opposed to what the old planning and zoning board did when you all, or the board was approving permits before Scott was the one doing that. I think one of the big things for the planning commission now is to look at when we have things like this come up that we haven't been consistent in how the ordinance has been applied and what has been approved, and then now we have another case where potentially now we're gonna tell this person no, even though in the past, other people have moved forward with similar type projects.
They haven't been similar. They have not been
Well, as far as,
separate buildings.
They have it.
well,
I'm not aware of that, Brady.
Well, that worries me because you approved them.
I'd like to see that.
so
I can show you.
it doesn't,
I'll give you addresses.
okay, that's enough of that, both of you. Because obviously there are accessory buildings in town that have living quarters in them. That is the understanding that I have from Scott.
That's correct.
Yep, and how they were approved, when they were approved, doesn't really matter. I think the question before us now is, what do we want to do going forward so that we can be
Right.
consistent? And I will put it out there that I understand, at least what I recall from looking at the DCCRs for my plat, like, yes, one dwelling structure, single family home per lot. So the association's, you know, covenants would not allow it, but if, as a town, we want to deviate from that, I don't particularly see a problem doing that. But we need to be consistent. If we need to make some updates to the ordinance to either say yes or no, one way or the other, I think we need to do that. And I do think there's an issue, or going to be a problem for the town if this gentleman's coming asking for a variance now, because I think he says in here that he sees from the code that it's not allowed, but then he's gonna find out other people have similar type structures. He's specifically asking for a variance, so, and there is a variance process, and I don't know if that's what, it doesn't sound like that's what was followed last time.
No.
So, and quite frankly, we're not ready to do it tonight either, based on just looking at what the procedure is in the ordinance. It says the planning commission shall place the variance request on the agenda for a regular scheduled planning commission meeting. The commission will solicit public comments during the meeting on the application for a variance. At the public meeting, the planning commission shall consider the application, the supporting materials, and the public statements provided, and shall act to either approve or disapprove the application based upon the variance standards. And then there's appeals procedures and things like that. So in my mind, yes, this is on our agenda tonight, and it says request for variance guest house office space. But again, I don't think we're ready to actually make any kind of decision about it. I feel like as a planning commission, we should have put a notice out on email to the public saying we're having this meeting tonight and we were going to be hearing a variance request. At least, yeah, we did publish the agenda on the town website, but we didn't notify the public about it in a broader manner. So one of the things I would like to do is make sure we do that and put some, you know, follow what our procedures are. And if we find that our procedures are not good or need updating, then as a commission, we need to make recommendations and updates, or recommend updates to the ordinances or to the procedures.
I am totally puzzled that there are living spaces in separate buildings.
That's surprising me, because you voted on them.
Oh, no.
I mean, there's been half a dozen of them over the last few years.
Last few years, yeah.
I would like to see that list.
That was with the
There's
old,
one up there on Redwood, there's Wayne Halls, there's the one over down there on.
No, write them out for me. I'll look at the plans.
So
I can give you a list of the ones I know of,
I think
and I
one
know
of-
there's some that I don't know
One of the things too.
that was voted on by the previous planning and zoning commission or.
Board.
of. Right, but she was a member of,
Yeah.
not you per se, but she
Yeah,
was a member, I
so-
was a member of that, Mike Black and multiple
No,
others.
I would really like to have that list and look at those.
Well, I
look at
think some
those.
of it is, you know, for instance, when this first came up, which was right before I went on vacation for a week, before the last meeting, you know, it originally came in guest house, which immediately you're like, well, we can't do that, right? Because everyone in your head, it's like, we're not allowed to do that. But then he recently, and he was very upfront about what the plans were, and then he came back in with shop space. But yeah, people gonna, you know, you could put an air mattress in your garage and people can sleep in it if it's a detached garage, right? So.
Well, I guess if you keep rephrasing the question, it ultimately becomes the answer. So, you know, and he cites in here, for example, he's built some of these things. But that was permitted or allowed under different ordinances than we have now?
No, the ordinance hasn't
Same
changed.
ordinances? Well, the only thing I can go by is the ordinances that we have printed now, and they say this can't be done.
That's why he's asking for the variance.
And so, well, then we set another precedent, you know? I mean, I think this town is at the mercy of the precedents it's set.
Yeah, well, and again, it's that's very true, and we just need to try and be consistent going forward and make any changes.
Well, let's
that might be-
enforce the current ordinances then.
I mean, is that how the rest of the commission feels? Like you would not want to allow any dwelling space in an accessory building?
Yes.
One other thing I'd bring up is if we allow these things to pop up everywhere, recently we had a discussion about when our water runs out. It's supposed to be when this place is built out without these extra things. When we're built out, we're supposed to be at 106% of our water usage. we start adding more places, more water gets used, and we start running out sooner. I don't think that that's arguable. This is gonna increase traffic, it's gonna increase activity on lots, it's gonna be a problem perhaps for some neighbors. I just don't buy it. I think the single thing to do is just acknowledge that the town is held in ransom by precedents that it's set and bad mistakes and bad choices before, and start acting like a town now that is preparing for what is really the future. I mean, this place was built by, it was just put together, right, before it became a town. So those were precedences. Okay, well, I don't think this town's gonna ever move forward until it accepts the fact that this is now and that was then. And I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, maybe that's, maybe this guy feels like it's a bummer because he's built these things before, but that was before.
Well, I think if I'm, again, reading this correctly, there's no plan to add another septic system or anything like that. Everything would run to the existing septic.
That's
It
correct.
was oversized when the original, or the main house was built. I did just, over the last few days, look at the number of water accounts we have in town for metered and unmetered. So people that have a residence and then people that own a lot that don't have a meter. And interestingly, there's about 10% of the lots in town, based on the review of the accounts, that are owned by people that have a single-family residence. And those lots are adjacent to the existing single-family residence. So that means people have bought the lot next to them, the lot behind them, whatever. Sometimes it's one lot, so there's some people that own 3 or 4 lots around them. And so while I can't say it for a fact, when I see that in the billing structure, I can assume that they bought those lots to preserve the open space, they have no intent to build on them, maybe some of them eventually will, or they'll sell them or whatever. But the scenario where we're 100% built out is impossible. It could happen eventually.
I wouldn't say impossible, I'd say improbable.
Okay.
And you're not stopping those people from selling their other 3
Oh, no,
lots.
absolutely not, but the immediate concern about any, overtaxation of our water system, I don't think there is one. I'm not saying that the town doesn't need to plan for that eventuality, in the 106% usage when every single lot is built upon and everybody's running their sprinklers at 100% during the hottest day in the summer, and suddenly we don't have enough water. But anyway, that's kind of an aside. For this then, what I would like to do is table any decision on this new request for variance. This is new since the last meeting with the
Yes.
rewording, okay?
Fair enough.
All right, so fair enough, let's do
And I
that.
think, he needs to be here as well.
Yes.
He told me he was coming with his wife, but I don't know what happened to
Okay.
him, so.
That's all right. I would like to, my recommendation would be, I would like to table it to the next meeting, and in between now and then, we'll put out an email about the next planning commission meeting, and that we will be having a public hearing about this, and we will make a decision about the new submittal of the variance at that meeting, if that is acceptable to the commissioners.
But our decision only goes on to the board, to the town council, right?
Yes, because if we deny his variance, he can appeal it, and I believe that would be decided by the town council.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do too is that I'll make sure the town council is aware of this, and that at the previous meeting, when it was discussed, even though we don't have minutes of it, that it was not approved, or would not have been approved by the commission. And so we're gonna look at it again, since he resubmitted it with different wording,
Mhm.
and make, a decision, and then if he wants to appeal it to the town council, he could do that. So, all right, can we do that? All right, thank you. All right, let's move on. Is there any public comment? Thank you. All right, next on the agenda are discussion items. I just put the 2025 master plan, but I need to make a note, and I need to make sure you said Lynn didn't get it either, but he's resigned from the board, so let me.
Yeah, Lynn and I both did not receive
Okay,
that.
I don't know what happened there, so I apologize. Just make a note to send you.
Just finished talking about it. So I just got off work. They want to look into this.
Okay. So I've only sent out the first two chapters. Kathy, thank you for your comments. And I did get some, well, Jennifer Stewart, who isn't here tonight, but she had provided some comments. She's come to a couple of our meetings. She's interested in being a member of the Planning Commission, and she is the young lady that actually was a planner in Indiana. She and her husband just moved. Her husband actually runs the water system in Jackson. They live here, so they wanted to get involved in the community. And since Lynn has resigned, I'm getting ahead of myself here, I would like to recommend her to be a new commissioner and also to look at who else's terms. After Laura's is still on, right? Yes. But let me look real quick. That was one of the things I did want to cover tonight was terms. Who wants to stay? Okay. Your term is up, Kathy. So it's yours, Commissioner Summerall. So it's yours, actually. So are you all interested in staying? It'll be at the end of June. At the end? Yes. No, I'm fine. Okay.
What's the duration?
3 years. Okay. And then what we'll do is, I will propose adding, Jen Stewart to Lynn Updike State. So we'll have a full
Bring me to
And I don't know about Dolores, do you know if she's interested? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, very good. All right. So as far as the master plan, 2 chapters have been sent out, 1 or 2, working on the next couple, so those, the goal will be to get the next 2 chapters out as soon as possible for the commission to look at. Also, I'm going to have the staff set up a page on the town website so we can start posting the draft chapters so that the members of the public want to review them, they can provide comments as well. Toward the end of the summer, into the early fall, the goal being to get all the draft chapters out by the end of the summer. And then have a meeting, we'll call it sort of a community and town leadership meeting, where we bring members of the boards together and the council and look at some of the goals and objectives that will be updated in the master plan to get feedback from them. And then ultimately, make any updates and then put out the full draft in October timeframe for 30 days of public comment. With the goal of being including the new master plan at the end of December, by the end of the calendar year. So I'll do those 2 chapters, and then the next 2 should be forthcoming fairly soon. I don't promise a date yet, but it's high on my to-do list. Okay, next, any questions on the master plan? The next topic is the commercial zone next to us. I favored that's what these 2 hand-drawn depictions are. So, as you're all aware, the Red Barn commercial lot was purchased by Dave Holman and Viking Development a couple months ago, and they're using it for storage. And have taken the awning off. In the meantime, Mr. Allred and his partners they're under contract for the other commercial lots, all of them. And they came in and they spoke with Trevor and myself a few weeks ago, and he brought in just kind of, these are notional sketches, nothing formal, right? But he wanted to kind of get an idea of where the town might be working with him to develop those lots. And so he sketched this out, and his main idea, or him and his partners, their idea is to develop this area that they would kind of call the ranch, and they would have retail space, they would have, coffee shop, art gallery, lots of different things. The one caveat was to make the whole idea feasible, would to have some living or rental space on the second floor. Because that makes it viable income-wise for the developer, or it's my understanding. Here, a little bit to that. And of course, all of it would be subject to approval by the town and by the commission as this would move forward. So he just, again, was coming in with some notional ideas. One of the other things he was talking about, or they were talking about, in the second picture is potentially putting 2 buildings on each lot, instead of, like, there's one with that concept, and then, again, all sort of in the very formative stages. Nothing that they're planning to do in the near term. They haven't even closed on the properties yet, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that it's in the works and it's going to be some more. If there were to be residential or rental, dwelling space of any sort over in the commercial area, I believe we have to look at rezoning. Because I don't believe that's allowed in the commercial ordinance now.
Rezoning to what?
Mixed use, potentially.
Conditional use.
Something like that, or grant conditional use for, some sort of living space, or rentals. But anyway, it's again, very formative, but just know that it looks like we have a developer that is willing to work with the town to actually put something there that the town residents would find useful, and also help them work with the project. Any questions? I know there's a lot of unknowns there right now, but it's coming. And I guess the one good thing would be is, despite having put our moratorium in place for cryptocurrency mining, and now there's no commercial lots for crypto miners. Yeah. So, on our side, yes, on our side of the road, correct.
I have a question. Yes, does she plan on exposing those lots before the town? So she has to living spaces above commercial.
Yes.
And it's being closed on the other one. Right. But he closed the town. Decision on the story. So that's the plan on doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're gonna buy no matter what, and then they're gonna have to work with the town to move forward with whatever they want to build. And if
And if the town says no to the deal,
then they might just treat it as an investment and sell it to somebody else.
well,
Yeah. We did have that conversation, but we wouldn't be able to start anything until it goes through the commission and Scott gives the rubber stamp to the plans and all that. Any other questions on that? Okay, items to be turned over to the town council. Kind of went through, the new terms for the commissioners, so I'll make sure that that's going to get into the agenda for the town council in June. Get everybody reappointed and reappointed for the steward. I believe she's still interested in that. And then also I will make sure that the council is aware of this thing that's to be considered. Because my thought would be, and I don't know, if this commission just denies the variance that they're.
Yeah, I'm the one with that area. If you want to ask me any questions about it, sorry I was late.
No, I appreciate you coming. Scott said he thought you were gonna be here, so,
Yeah.
And I apologize, like, I wasn't at the last meeting, and I know this got talked about and discussed quite a bit there.
Yeah, after I left, that was a little bit of why I had left, is I wasn't asked any questions about it. I was just told, no. I wasn't given any reason. And so that kind of beat me a little bit.
Well, actually, I think you were given a reason, which was it wasn't permitted by our current ordinances.
Well, the precedent's there. I mean, all over the rain, when I drive, I don't want to drive.
Yeah, you missed our earlier part of our discussion. Those variances were made before this group existed. And those variances set precedents that are a problem for this town. And the best way for this town to move forward is follow the current ordinances and quit referring back to the past.
What is wrong with it?
Well, it's 2 living structures on one property, which is not allowed.
Currently by the ordinance, but ordinances can be.
Well, what do we go by? if these things are like, well, today I want this ordinance to read this way, but tomorrow I'll change it, you know, call it what it is. We've got the rules. We have to work by the rules. If the ordinance is said, okay, I'd say fine, because I got nothing to do. We keep getting asked on this commission to vote against our current ordinances. And that is not appropriate.
Well, I think what's happening too is that we're being presented with things that we need to make a decision on, and whether or not the current situation warrants updates to the town code so that can place for a while. So I just want to make sure we give everything a fair shake out, right?
The current town ordinance on residential zones and so forth has been in place for how long?
Since the town.
2005.
Yeah, so 15 years. And, you know, I understand that is what was outlined at the time, but then things do change. And it's just a matter of how flexible we want to be. I certainly don't want to see, you know, tiny homes popping up in someone's backyard if they rent out short-term rentals.
For sure. This is a custom build.
Exactly.
It's been designed.
I saw your designs, and so it looks like it's, you know, a complement to the house, like a accessory building, about wood living space. And, you know, we've tried to avoid getting ourselves into a jam like that. In the short-term rental ordinance, we specifically state you cannot rent an accessory space or a shed or anything like that. So it's covered that way. But I hear you, Commissioner Sandoval, but so I just want us to have a chance to think on it some more, to really review it, and then let's do a public hearing at the next meeting and go through it. So if you do have any questions for
States.
States, here now, and I guess last time.
Yeah, I think his point is, you know, in the past, I mean, we allow accessory buildings. He wants to use it as an office. And if he has family, you know, they have somewhere to stay, but, you know, but he's been very forthright about it. And most people would just put the accessory building there anyway, because we allow it.
Yeah.
So he's been very open and upfront about what he wants.
I appreciate that. Just as another example, we've been kicking around town council, a new permit for non-structural remodels, like basement, finishing a basement. And council is very divided over, you know, what constitutes a remodel, or, you know, have inside, one about like TV inside of my house, I have to get a permit. No, that's not what we're talking about. But, you know, the comment was made at one council meeting that, well, I would just do it and not tell anybody. And that's what I think has happened in some cases in the past, is that someone's made an accessory building and then they do have a place where people could sleep or stay. And it wasn't necessarily apparent, you know, when things came before the planning and zoning board.
Or they ran that as an Airbnb.
Or, yeah, and which you can't do, so in fact, we are covered that.
Well, it's hard to be successful when success is a moving target. And I just want clear delineation on what we are supposed to do, which is the only way we can do our job.
I mean, if this just does a, as it's currently defined as shop space. I mean, it would have the ability for people to sleep in it and to, you know, have guests stay in it, but again, what accessory building that already has heat, I assume, in the shop and whatnot, I don't know. People stay in that too. Okay, that's just,
We can probably stick people wherever we want them.
yeah, but the garage.
But as far as doing something formally with the blessing of the town, you know, I think that's what we're doing. People do things behind everybody's back.
You know, who says that it isn't a tiny home? Well, also, with shop, you don't want tiny homes.
It's a stick built, it's a custom structure.
Right, I understand that, but all of these definitions run into each other, you know, and are easily,
Which definition?
well, any kind of a building can put that in it, and then it turns into something else, but maybe it turns it into a tiny home. And we don't hear people wanting to do that. And so we just have to
I
figure
built
out,
one 3 years ago.
I'm very concerned about
3 years
that.
ago.
But I'm
And it
still
had a
concerned
permit and
about it.
everything.
And that's great, but that was given to you on a variance.
No.
No, what was it given
Not
to
the ones from
you?
before.
What, it just happened?
The one at the end of Cedar Drive was the same thing.
They just blessed it with I was against the ordinances.
It was.
So somebody should have jumped up and said something.
So I think that's what, as far as this commission goes, we've just gotta take a look at what the ordinance currently says, what has been approved in the past, and what should the ordinance say going forward. And then, there must be a line in the sand, right, and we won't decide it tonight, so I'm gonna work with Scott between now and the next meeting, take a good look at this, look at the ordinances, if we have some suggestions on what would make this palatable and what would keep us from getting ourselves in situations where things have been approved that are then used for something else. You don't have a crystal ball in here. I understand, so it's going to be a little bit of a tricky one, but we'll work through it. Okay, thank you, Davis, for coming, I appreciate it, I'm sorry to make you come back.
No, it's okay.
All right, any action items for the next meeting? I just made one with Scott, we'll get some more kind of a sort of assessment of how this stacks up against the ordinance and.
Just a question. It's been a month since we were gonna see Mountain Estates request in a week. So where are we with that?
I did talk to Trevor the other day, and he's still expecting to see a petition come in, but I guess Mr. Eisen's just not there yet. It's a little bit more put together than he expected. But my suspicion is it's coming.
I talked to him last week. He's working on it. He just got tied up with a bunch of other projects he's doing. So he said he's going to try to get it out by the end of this month, which is now. So,
Yeah, which is now, so probably.
so
Way behind on the cups.
I suspect probably by the next meeting we'll have something.
He's rented them an outhouse for a couple of weeks now, but I think the Firewise guy's not here.
Oh, dear. All right, anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
And second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Spirited discussion.
Well, you know how I feel.
I do. I appreciate that.
Sure you actually want me back for 2 years?
It's good to have different opinions on commission. I'm not really a fan of lockstep. I feel like people don't get a chance to consider the other side of the position, Might as well just like little lemmings. I need to be an edge of the field.
Should I stop this recording for now?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, was it recorded on the Owl or on Zoom? How are you doing it?
The new camera.
Okay. So where did it go? Where is it?
Well, we're
I
just
wanna watch it.
yeah. So Jamie was, I think, watching it downstairs. So yeah, we're just testing it.
Yeah. No, I would just be curious to see.
Yeah. So I was actually gonna go down and take a look at it,
Okay.
see how it turned out. So we know it's ready for you.
All right. Very good. As long as there were no minutes from last time or recording.
I wish you wish you would have acceptable.
So,
Yeah. We're supposed to have that line all trimmed down.
me too, actually. So I was looking through our variance process, the ordinance. It seemed to me that we should notify the public we're going to be having, it says public hearings.
Which is,
Usually you have to put a notice out about area, which we used to do
That's
on
got
the old planning and zoning board, whenever somebody wanted to do a lot combination. We had to do a combination. And then usually
How much property is that?
within the regular board, but
5 acres. The rest is all slope, right?
And I just, I don't think that happened.
First time I talked to him, they're always selling 325 pounds, you know, 500. He's like, and he looked like a road up there.
I mean, I'm looking at it, I mean, it's bad shape. Yeah, I know, it's too steep.
And he's gonna have.
Right.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, smart.
Well, see, and that's my concern, is that I wanna.
No, well, it's probably a good thing, you don't want a neighbor there, right?
We've always understood that. The balance is always why I didn't know there. They would have got it. Way down, a nice big house on it.
Realize that it will also partially. Like, why is that? I can't say, maybe it wasn't clear on the one.
You know, every,
Or maybe it started out, got that hill, and had to slow down. And then it gets,
Hey, how are you?
and it gets tricky
I'm
too.
gonna shift the recording, make sure.
Because, yeah, it's so many. Yeah.
Precedent variance of 12. That's why I stated that I said, the ordinance, I said, if the ordinance is you know, he's got it for sale. I don't think it'll sell. It still won't sell much. But it's better to have all of them, so we get rid of that and we do all the crap. There's always and if I was I would go there because everybody on the internet already hates it. So I'm gonna look up a bunch of 32 law to shoot out my,